Chapter 1646. Gu Shijio took the soup from him and immediately started eating. It was good that was willing to eat, and soon she finished the entire bowl of soup. Long Sai was relieved that she was not trying to commit suicide by refusing food. Quietly he observed her. He could tell that there was something different about her now. Very soon, Long Sai discovered more and more of her changes. When she initially came to meet him, he knew that she was keeping her countenance with a forced smile. She could not get over her past relationship and was lost in her thoughts. However, the incident with Di Fui served as a second chance for her to have a physical transcendence and rebirth from her previous experience. She started to have a normal daily routine and practice. She would talk to him about all sorts of mental cultivation methods. She started to perform various alchemies and even managed to extract some level 8 pills. In order for her to perform the alchemy, she had to be completely focused without the slightest distraction from her personal life. Once she was distracted, the process would definitely turn out to be a complete failure with either useless or bad quality pills. If she managed to extract high-quality pills of level 8, it would mean that there was nothing that could distract her from the devotion of her duties anymore. She could finally get over her past relationship. She seemed to be more energetic, and the way she talked became gradually optimistic. Enthusiastically, she started to indulge herself in the things that she loved to do and performed well. She seemed to have abandoned the burden that she had been dragging for so long. Her great display of vigor was proof of her revitalization. Her new change came as a great relief to Long Sai. He was very relieved. She was once again the Gu Shijio that he once knew. However, no one knew the price that she had to pay for her transformation. Gu Shijio spent 2 more days in Tianwen clan before returning to her residence. Gu Shijio had always been missing, so Gu Xietian was not really concerned about her recent disappearance. He came to visit her and was relieved to see that she was doing well. On the first day of her return from the Tianwen clan, Gu Xietian could already tell that there was something different about his daughter. There were many affairs that she needed to attend to as National Celestial Master. Moreover, she had many friends that would continuously stay in touch with her. On the first day of her return, she immediately started to deal with all kinds of matters. She managed her work efficiently. Her gathering with her friends was terrific too. She would no longer stare blankly at the wall and get distracted in her thoughts. On the second night, while she was meditating in her room, she noticed that there was something wrong in her room. Immediately, she opened her eyes. There was a stranger in her room. There was a man of white robe and white hair. He was even wearing a white mask to cover up his face, leaving only his bright eyes. It was Di Fui. That was incorrect. It was the Lord, also known as Huang Tu. The attire was a clear display of his current identity as the Lord. Their eyes met for a while. Then, Gu Shijio rose from her bed and greeted him formally with a bow. "Welcome, my lord. What is the matter?" The courtesy in her response was polite and considerate. She knew her manners, leaving Huang Tu no chance to be picky about her flaws. Huang Tu observed her for a moment, as though trying to find some clues from her expression. However, Gu Shijio was calm even under his intense glare. She did not show any waves of emotion. "Gu Shijio, you are now the National Celestial Master of the Kingdom, so you should take up your responsibility. There will be a test for the identity of Heaven's Gift disciples tomorrow. You will be the one to host the event." Gu Shijio looked him in the eye and said, "My lord, are you treating me like one of the Heaven's Gift's disciple now?" In fact, all Heaven's Gift disciples were his followers as well, like Long Sai, Hua Win and the rest. They always acted according to his orders. "No, your position is higher than the Heaven's Gift disciples," Huang Tu answered. "Are you handing me the task of Celestial Master Zua? Aren't you worried that I may seize your authority?" "I am not worried as long as you are capable." Huang Tu was not concerned. Gu Shijio could feel the chill in his tone, but her smile remained. "Can I say no?" Huang Tu looked at her fixedly and answered, "You can say no, but you have to know that you are a little different." Chapter 1647. A bit different? Does he think she cares? The creases near Gu Zijia's lips were drawn into deeper lines. "Thank you. I will gladly do your bidding, but so long as you fulfill my conditions." You're the first one who dares to speak of conditions with me. Aren't you afraid of my wrath? No, you have told me before that I'm a bit different here, haven't you? Real clever. You finally know how to take things to your advantage. What conditions do you demand? Speak up. Revoke Long Sai's punishment to the distant Fireland, and I will perform your task wonderfully, Gu Shijio stated her condition. Huang Tu's eyes lit up. And what if I disagree? Gu Shijio did not falter. I will still perform the task entrusted to me, but as this type of challenge is a first to me, I can't assure that I won't make any mistakes and can only do it within my abilities. Are you threatening me right now? No, I'm just speaking the truth. If you agree to my condition, I will perform the task as though my life depended on it. Within my abilities, and as though my life depended on it. These two phrases could produce a massive difference in the final result. Huang Tu looked at her for a moment. I can grant him a one-day deduction from his punishment, but you are to succeed in this mission without mistake, or his punishment would be doubled. Although a one-day deduction from Long Sai's punishment was not what Gu Shijio had wanted, it was not too bad either. One must know that to spend a mere minute in the distant Fireland is an experience of unmitigated agony. When Huang Tu turned his back, Gu Shijio asked, My lord has shifted a lot of tasks that were supposed to be conducted by celestial masters to me. Do you not want that identity anymore? Huang Tu paused for a while. He remarked lightly, I've grown sick of that identity, and left. The house restored its former quietude. Gu Shijio closed her eyes and sat for a while, laughing lightly. Grown sick of that identity. So he could just throw it away without any sentiments? Indeed, Di Fui was just one of his many incarnations. He has already lived for so many years and taken so many identities, how could Di Fui be the only identity he has thrown away? Of course, whatever Di Fui had experienced or felt would be cast away along with his identity without any attachments. A god is indeed a god. Without any emotions or heart, he is more detached from the world than Buddha. She shook her head. She should not be thinking about these things anymore. She took out the booklet used for testing the Heaven's Gift disciples and focused on studying its content. She would succeed. For her friends, for those she wished to protect, the 20th day of the first month. The sky was clear with a light breeze. A good day for the veneration of the dead and groundbreaking. The open heaven stage had opened again after an interim of 5 years. The last time it was opened was 10 years ago, which was for Yun Qingluo, and the time before that was for Gu Shijio. The interval between the two openings was not long. The memories of the tests remained fresh in the memories of many of the citizens of the Feishing Kingdom and became a subject of conversation when it came to their minds. Now that the news of the reopening of the open heaven stage had spread to the country, the citizens were brimming with elation. When they heard that the host for the test this time would be the celestial master Gu Shijio, their excitement was augmented to a pure effervescence. Early in the morning, the citizens both old and young flocked to the open heaven stage. Before the event had begun, the open space below the stage was already pullulating with people. The hawkers took advantage of this occasion to sell confectionery and snacks. It was much more bustling than the time when Gu Shijio was being tested. The person who was being tested this time was a black-shirt young man from the Zhaoyang Kingdom named Hu Qifeng. He had stayed in the post house after arriving in the Feishing Kingdom. He had thought that he would be tested on the 15th of the first month and did not expect to wait for a whole extra 5 days. Chapter 1648. The young black-shirt boy spent those 5 days like a cat on a hot tin roof. Uncertainty, excitement, anxiety, fear. All types of emotions billowed in his chest. Of course, he did not sleep well. What this resulted in was dark circles under his eyes when he came to the open heaven stage in Mu Feng's ship. The boisterous crowd made him more anxious and caused his feet to shiver. Get down. When the ship landed on the stage, Mu Feng patted Hu Qifeng's shoulder, leading to his astonishment and almost caused him to tumble over. He was after all just a child. In this situation his limbs turned cold. He staggered when he jumped off the ship. Mu Feng shook his head secretly. For too many times he has seen those who looked like Heaven's Gifts disciples, and among all of them, this child was the most ordinary and cowardly, who could not face a crowd. How could he be a Heaven's Gift disciple? How can a real Heaven's Gift disciple be that wimpy? His Majesty has arrived. A loud announcement was heard from far away. The king is coming as well. Hufangi became more anxious. Rong Jalua had indeed come with his multitude of officials in utmost grandeur. The citizens made way for them automatically. Rong Jalua went to the terrace that was specially prepared for him and sat down. The officials and citizens looked up at him and bowed down in reverence, proclaiming "Long live the king" in enthusiasm. Since Hua Qifang was not a citizen of the Feishing kingdom and seemed to be a Heaven's Gift disciple, he did not have to prostrate himself before the king and only had to bend his body slightly as a gesture. Hua Qifang stole a glance at the king when he bowed down. He saw that the king looked to be about 24 or 25 and had an extremely debonair appearance. When he slightly raised his brows and carried a light smile on his lips, one would feel as though a spring breeze had graced their face. When their gaze unintentionally locked onto each other's, Hua Qifang immediately lowered his head with his heart beating faster. This king had a pair of faintly purple eyes. The purpleness of his irises was charismatic and pierced through his heart. Hua Qifang did not dare to look any further and shifted his gaze away to the stage. There were only him and the 4 messengers on the stage. Celestial Master Zhua, who had caused him much distress, was nowhere to be seen. When would Celestial Master Zhua come? He silently asked Mu Feng. He was not used to being the center of attention and especially not in front of such a large crowd. He wished for the test to start soon so it can end early. As he was quite a solitary and reclusive person who did not like gossip, he did not know that the person testing him today had already changed. Mu Feng gave him a strange look. Had Celestial Master Zhua not tortured him enough? Why would he look forward to his arrival? The person testing you today is National Celestial Master Gu. At first, Hua Qifang was startled, but then his eyes lit up. The Celestial Master we met on the road that day? Mu Feng shot him another look. This brat was typically unable to remember anyone he met, but he could recall Gu Shijio just by taking a look at her. Already a player at such a young age. Mu Feng found another flaw in him and humphed. Of course it's her. He then warned him, don't ogle at her when she comes, or someone would dig your eyes out and step on them. I want. Hua Qifang spoke with a straight face. I respect her, and venerate her like a goddess. He added. Mu Feng was speechless by his words. The National Celestial Master has arrived, someone shouted. The crowd raised their heads and saw a white jade chariot drawn by a snow-white mythological beast flying from the east to the top of the open heaven stage. The coachman was a handsome blue-shirt young man who was brimming with energy. He was the one who had made the announcement earlier. Chapter 1649. The curtains of the chariot opened, and a lady appeared on the shaft of the carriage. Her long hair cascaded over her shoulders like a waterfall, while her ink-black robe that concealed her fair body revealed her charming grace. Even though she did not have any other accessories than the ribbon on her head, she did not look as though she took no care of her appearance. The ink-black robe augmented her chilly attitude and she emanated an air of cold detachment. The sun hung high behind her back and seemed to illuminate her surroundings with a light silvery halo, causing the hearts of the crowd to shudder and fixate their gaze on her. National Celestial Master. The crowd cheered frantically with excitement. Hua Qifang's eyes glowed brighter. He did not prostrate himself before the king just now, but when he saw Gu Shijio descending lightly from the carriage, he bowed down on all fours as though he had seen a goddess. Gu Shijio alighted gracefully and swept her gaze across the stage. She saw the 4 messengers and the pillars on the stage. Her eyes glimmered slightly. She was no stranger to this place. She had been tested here some 10 years ago, except now she was the tester. It was already water under the bridge. She had no need to remember it anymore. Gu Shijio conducted matters in a direct manner and had not spoken much after she came. Her gaze shifted to Hua Qifang. She saw that this child was looking at her anxiously with his face red and legs shivering. It was obvious that he was distraught. Looking at him, she remembered herself being in that same situation some 10 years ago. She was anxious at that time as well, but she had mental strength and was able to conceal her feelings. The memory of her being alone and helpless on that stage was still fresh in her mind. Gu Shijio asked Hua Qifang a few standard questions that were asked every time one tests a Heaven's Gift disciple. Her style was different from Di Fui's. Di Fui hosted the tests with an aloof yet menacing aura that would cause the craven to cry in terror. Almost everyone who had been tested by him before is afraid of him like mice to cats. Although Gu Shijio appeared to be remote, she was gentle when she questioned and carried a soothing power in her voice. Though Hua Qifang initially stuttered when he answered the questions, after a short exchange of words with Gu Shijio, he managed to quell his anxiety and go through the segment with confidence. Gu Zijio's heart was slightly moved after she finished asking the questions. The questions that she had asked were those that were compulsory as dictated in the booklet given to her by Di Fui. Of course, the way she was to ask those questions was up to her improvisation. Although she did not think much of Hua Qifang at the start, a strange thought began to emerge in her mind after asking those questions. What if this brat was an actual Heaven's Gift disciple? No wonder Di Fui would bring him for the test, maybe he was uncertain as well. It was her first time hosting the trial. Although it involved a lot of complicated procedures, she followed through all of the steps with utmost order and adroit skill. Mu Feng and a few others knew that it was only since yesterday that she had handled these matters and were prepared to cover up for her in case of any mistakes, but when they saw her next series of actions they were taken in awe. She executed the series of intricate and spiritual power-depleting actions flawlessly. The crowd watched from below in silence. Chapter 1650 Rong Jiaoa was observing Gu Shijio with a smile. He seemed happy and relieved about something. When the 5 colored rays were emitted from the spiritual pillar and engulfed Hua Qifang, the entire square with tens of thousands of people were in complete silence. They could easily hear it if a needle fell on the floor. The 5 color rays whirled around Hua Qifang, and 4 of them disappeared. However, the green rays influxed Hua Qifang's body and he glowed in green. The green light then moved around his body and disappeared a few minutes later. Gu Shijio glimpsed at Hua Qifang with surprise and relief. Finally, she announced, he is a Heaven's Gift disciple who cultivates the wood element of spiritual power. It shocked everyone at the scene. The entire square that was initially quiet was filled with thunderous applause and cheer. Some were surprised while others were still in utter shock. Mu Feng was also shocked. Although Mu Feng had witnessed countless tests conducted by Di Fui, he could not be sure whether Gu Shijio had done it correctly because the procedures were too complicated. The consequence was too severe if it was inappropriately done. In the past, many from the testee's fellow countrymen would come and support the testee whenever he or she had to be examined as a Heaven's Gift disciple. Occasionally, some of the members from the royal family would come and cheer as they found there was no reason for them to excuse themselves. However, the people from Hua Qifang's home country did not think he was a Heaven's Gift disciple because they assumed he was insane to claim that he was a Heaven's Gift disciple in the first place. Everyone looked at him as a joke, hence, not many people from his home country came to support him. A few people did come, and they screamed in delight after Gu Shijio made the announcement. A voice came from the crowd, this must be the first time for National Celestial Master to host the ceremony, there must be a mistake. The voice was loud enough to cover the noise from the crowd. The clear voice also lingered around everyone's ears. The crowd immediately took a glimpse and realized that it came from a scholarly young man. There were 4 more young men around him who looked below 18 years of age. Based on the way they dressed, they were probably from the Zhaoyang kingdom. Hua Qifang's expression changed as he looked at them with his fists clenched. They were his childhood buddies. The smart young man was the most pampered prince of the emperor from the Zhaoyang kingdom. It was a surprise for him to visit. Gu Shijio gazed down at the young men. Casually she asked, what kind of mistake? The young man laughed arrogantly before responding, how could a person like Hua Qifang be a Heaven's Gift disciple? His spiritual power is low, he has no guts, and he is irresponsible. Gu Shijio listened to him and then asked again, I asked you what's the mistake, not your opinion about the outcome. The young man answered, the result is wrong, that's why it's a mistake. If he is a heaven's gift disciple, then I also deserve to be one because my spiritual power is higher than his and am also smarter than him. He then sized up Gu Shijio with a gaze filled with contempt. Although National Celestial Master has a very high level of spiritual power as well as a high status in the Facian Kingdom, the test to identify the Heaven's Gift disciple should not be done carelessly because the future of the entire continent depends on it. Celestial Master Zwa has always been the main host of the test and no one would doubt the result as he is trustworthy. However, National Celestial Master Gu is a rookie and a lady. Chapter 1651. The scholarly kid then looked at Mu Feng. Messenger Mu Feng, I feel this is a big deal, and it could be done in some other day if Celestial Master Zwa is too busy today instead of just randomly assigning someone to conduct the test. He then made a gesture to greet Ring Jialo. Your Majesty, I'm here to watch the test with my Emperor's instruction. Even though Hua Qifang is from the Zhaoyang Kingdom and we wish he could be a genuine Heaven's Gift discipline, we shouldn't let this be carried out like a game. We also wish he could be the pride of our country. However, Heaven's Gift disciple could affect the future of the entire continent. Could you please invite Celestial Master Zwa to conduct the test? It was apparent that he did not trust Gu Shijio. Besides that, what he said could influence the crowd as well. Those who have originally doubted the result would be even more doubtful now. Suddenly, loud noises could be heard from the crowd. Mu Feng took a glimpse at Gu Shijio. He also thought there must be a small mistake because Hua Qifang did not look like a Heaven's Gift disciple. He wanted to speak for Gu Shijio. However, the Lord told him that Heaven's Gift disciples were considered as immortals and no error was tolerable. Rong Jiaoyuo's gaze was on Gu Shijio. She had lost a lot of her spiritual power after the ritual ceremony, hence, she looked slightly pale. However, she seemed to be calm and confident. Rong Jiaoyuo smiled. I trust our National Celestial Master's abilities, and I don't think she made a mistake. Your Majesty, this is not a small matter. The society would be chaotic if a person like him could also be a Heaven's Gift disciple. I'm sure he is not. The young prince just could not let this slide. A person like him? Gu Shijio finally voiced out. However, she was talking to Mu Feng. Messenger Mu Feng, is there a rule to restrict a coward with low spiritual power to be a Heaven's Gift disciple? Mu Feng shook his head. None. How about the spiritual pillar at the open heaven stage? Has it malfunctioned before? Never. That's it. Since there's nothing wrong with the spiritual pillar and I conducted the test according to all the procedures, what's there to be doubted? Hua Qifang is a Heaven's Gift disciple. Gu Shijio was firm about her decision. Celestial Master Gu, this is the first time for you to conduct the test. How did you make sure everything was done correctly? I believe the procedures are all very complicated and a tiny error could result in a different outcome. Messenger Mu, could you confirm that she has done everything accordingly? The young man got more pumped up with doubts. Mu Feng frowned because he had no way to judge. There must be no lie or mistake with regards to all the matters related to Heaven's Gift disciples, otherwise, he would be punished by the Lord. Thus, even Mu Feng did not dare to claim that he could confirm. Mu Feng took a breath and said, her method was all right. The prince smiled. That was insufficient to prove it right. Perhaps, it was not exactly right? I just feel we should get Celestial Master Zwa to conduct the test again someday. Mu Feng was very upset. Do you think you can just simply instruct Celestial Master Zwa? The young prince made a gesture to stop Mu Feng. I didn't mean that. However, it's related to the future of the entire continent. We can't just let a new Celestial Master conduct the test. We shouldn't allow for any mistakes, right? Especially now when we know for certain that there's a mistake. Mu Feng narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? She might not be wrong. The young man laughed aloud as he raised his chin. I'm sure she must be wrong. If Hua Qifang is a Heaven's Gift disciple, then so am I. Come again? A voice crept into his ears. I deserve to be a Heaven's Gift disciple. The young prince said. Oh really? Since you claim it, you should go for a test as well. The young prince was stunned with cold sweat. He immediately lifted his head. Who is? He did not manage to continue as his gaze stopped at a direction in midair. But, my lord! Chapter 1652. Everyone was shocked and immediately lifted their heads. The Lord! The Lord! Gosh, it's the Lord! A man with silver hair was hovering in midair. He was wearing a snowy white robe with a jade mask covering his face as a seven-colored auspicious cloud surrounded him. That was indeed the Lord. Countless people quickly kneeled and kowtowed as they cheered. Greetings, my lord. The cheer was as strong as the waves from the ocean, and the citizens were so excited. Originally, the Lord would only appear once in a decade or a century. However, he has shown up in the Facian Kingdom twice in the past 6 months. Moreover, he had done so publicly. Gu Shijio slightly pursed her lips as she watched him appear. However, it was difficult to identify her emotions at that moment. There was a rule practiced in the continent that the tester of the Heaven's Gift disciple was not required to kowtow to anyone. Therefore, Gu Zijia's back was straight. The Lord landed on the ground and took a glimpse at her. She gazed at him too. However, there was not much emotion in her gaze because she looked at him as a stranger. He narrowed his eyes because he knew that she finally got over their relationship. This girl gave her all when she was in a relationship. However, she was now completely over him. Sooner or later, the memories he tried so hard to create in her life would be wiped away. Perhaps, not even a single memory could be traced. That was what he wanted. However, his heart instantly sank and fell into an abyss when he saw Gu Zijia's cold gaze. Luckily, he was used to feeling heartbroken. His gaze was filled with a smile as he looked at her. Casually, he said, "You've done a good job, there's no mistake in the test." His voice lingered around at a fast speed, hence, everyone heard it, and all the citizens from the Facian Kingdom immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Shijio was now the pride of all the citizens in the Facian Kingdom. Thus, most of the citizens wished she had done it correctly. However, none of them could be sure about her earlier performance. Now that the Lord has confirmed her method, they had reasons to celebrate. No one ever doubted the Lord's judgment. Hence, the citizens once again cheered for Gu Shijio after a short pause. Gu Shijio had mixed emotions. Although others might not know the Lord's temperament, she knew it very well. He often crossed the line in the past, and she was worried that he might pick on her by twisting the facts, as he probably would not let Long Sai go so easily. To her surprise, he recognized her contribution. Anyway, that was a relief for her. She then gazed further ahead at the crowd after she thanked the Lord. Long Sai was standing there to support her. He was looking at her. Both of them smiled at each other as their gazes met. They understood each other without the need of saying a word. The Lord then looked down with his fists clenched in his sleeves. Subconsciously, he wanted to do something, but he decided to let go. He immediately shifted his gaze to the young prince. Icily, he added, "Oh well, it's such a surprise to find someone who claims that he is a Heaven's Gift disciple at the scene of a test." Instantly, the face of the young prince turned pale. He immediately kneeled on the ground, and his body was trembling. "Oh no, humbly, I was just making a metaphor." "A metaphor? Do you think you can simply make a metaphor about matters related to Heaven's Gift disciples?" The young prince was stammered while plenty of sweat rolled down from his forehead. Chapter 1653. The young prince stammered while plenty of sweat rolled down from his forehead as he continuously kowtowed. "My lord, please spare my life. My emperor father is aged. His Majesty is waiting for me to return home." The Lord did not bother him. Mu Feng walked forward with a smile. "This is such a fruitful day. We not only got a real Heaven's Gift disciple but also found a new prospect. Come on, let's get a test done so that you can experience the feeling of being judged by a million people." He then threw the young prince up to the stage. The young man peed in the pants out of fear. "I'm not. I'm really not. I was just careless with my words. My emperor father—" "Stop talking about your emperor father," Mu Feng interrupted. "Your emperor father still has many other princes. You're not the only one who can serve him. You're going to be his biggest pride if you're a Heaven's Gift disciple. Oh gosh, what's the smell? Mu Feng glimpsed at his wet pants. You peed? Gosh, it seems like your gut is not that big either. The young prince was embarrassed and yet fearful to the extent he could not get up. The Lord's gaze returned to Gu Shijio. Test him. Gu Shijio was speechless. Did he not know it consumed a lot of spiritual power to activate the spiritual pillar? She had already lost a third of her spiritual power during the test earlier. If she tests the young prince again. Did he think she was a robot? Moreover, she only agreed to test Hua Qifeng. She did not promise to examine this random man. Unfortunately, he was giving her an order with the identity of the Lord. She might get herself into trouble if she rejected his request publicly. Also, she was indeed upset with the young prince and wanted to teach him a lesson. Thus, she smiled as she suggested a condition which both of them understood. Get rid of another day. The Lord gazed at her. He was surprised that she never forgot to ask some benefits for Long Sai. Back then, she vomited blood because of his ruthless. Secondly, she felt she had got Long Sai into trouble. Thus, her lengthy coma was probably due to the combination of guilt and regret in her heart. Those days, she was often depressed. However, it was rare to see her having a good mood today as she finally found somewhere to release her tantrum. He pondered. Half a day. The punishment for Long Sai to stay in the mysterious Fireland was compulsory. 2 hours. Gu Shijio tried to bargain because she did not want to miss any chance. The Lord was speechless. That was the first time in his life to know someone who dared to negotiate with him. If it were someone else, he would have been thrown into space. However, it was her. 3 hours. The Lord said with a dull tone, nothing less than that. Gu Shijio was finally happy. She decided not to cross the line. However, Mu Feng and the rest did not seem to understand any of the content because they could not stop looking at each other. What kind of silent riddle they were talking about? What did it have to do with 1 day, half a day, 2 hours, and 3 hours? The young prince immediately felt numb when Gu Shijio glimpsed at him. All of his aura of arrogance instantly disappeared as he kowtowed to Gu Shijio. National Celestial Master. His tone was filled with entreat because he wished that Gu Shijio could spare him from the test. Women are always kind-hearted, and their hair is always more than their knowledge. Women should just stay at home to sew and serve the men. That was the mindset of the young prince. Thus, that was what he had to do to make Gu Shijio feel sympathetic. Therefore, he could not stop seeking her forgiveness while he kowtowed. However, Gu Shijio remained silent as she watched him kowtow repeatedly. Chapter 1654. Gu Shijio only spoke when his forehead almost bled. However, she was talking to the Lord. Can I use another way to test this person? The Lord slightly nodded. As long as it's correct, you can use any method you want. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief. The small note given by Di Fui had many different methods to test Heaven's Gift disciples. Using the open heaven stage was one of the most complicated ways, and it consumed a lot of spiritual power. Unless the tester had 70% confidence, Celestial Masters would not simply get them to the stage back in the old days. Certainly, Gu Shijio was an exception. Gu Shijio filtered all the information in her head and finally picked one which did not require much of her spiritual power. She then told the young prince with a smile, "You don't have to go to the stage, I have a better method for you." The young prince's eyes immediately sparkled. He thought his strategy was finally effective. Everything could be discussed as long as he did not have to be watched and judged in public. After all, it was not easy to deal with the pillar. If she used another method, it was also easy for her to skip some procedures. Indeed, the alternative method was very simple. Gu Shijio checked his pulse with a curtain between the two of them. According to the note, Heaven's Gift disciples had a very similar unique pulse rate. The details of the pulse rates were recorded in the note. One might not be a Heaven's Gift disciple even if he or she possessed such pulse rates. However, all the Heaven's Gift disciples also had such a unique pulse rate. Therefore, it was better for her to use this method first before needing to resort to the pillar. The young prince had a relatively good spiritual power. However, his pulse rate was normal. Therefore, in less than a minute, Gu Shijio concluded, he is not a heaven's gift disciple. The young prince was speechless, but went into a frenzy. It was too rash. It was really too rash. What Qifeng was just the son of a typical general, but he could be tested on the open heaven stage. While this young prince was the most pampered prince of the Zhaoyang kingdom. A prince was so much nobler than the son of a general. How could she conclude he was not a heaven's gift disciple by only checking his pulse rate? The young prince felt it was an insult to him and immediately protested. The buddies he brought along also followed him to protest. Some people were reckless with their words, and they even claimed that Celestial Master Gu was trying to take revenge. It was chaos at the scene. Gu Shijio casually said when everyone was done shouting, "Not convincing enough? You have to bear with it even if it's not convincing. I'm the one who makes the call here." The young prince has never been insulted like this in his life. His face immediately turned green. Gu Shijio was the national celestial master of the Feishan kingdom instead of the Zhaoyang kingdom. Why would she have the authority to say so? Anger made him forget about the fear. He turned around and kowtowed to the Lord. "My lord, this is too rash. Celestial Master Gu is taking revenge. My lord must seek justice for me." The Lord took a glimpse at him. One would not hire someone he did not trust, and one should trust the one he hired. Since I've appointed her to conduct the test, I shall leave it to her to handle it. Since she has concluded that you're not a heaven's gift disciple, you're certainly not. The young prince went speechless. The audience looked at each other. Apparently, the Lord was on Gu Zijia's side. Perhaps he intended to train Gu Shijio. Those imperial officers even had better speculations. They claimed that Celestial Master Zhuo was too high profile, which made the Lord's image look weak. He was seen as a threat to the Lord's status, hence, he has been banished from the role. Furthermore, Celestial Master Zhuo has gone missing for 8 years, and that indirectly led to the counterfeit Celestial Master Zhuo to endanger the continent and caused such big chaos. Perhaps, the Lord must be very upset with Celestial Master Zhuo. That must be the reason the Lord wanted to train Gu Shijio. Chapter 1655. Sooner or later, Celestial Master Gu might replace Celestial Master Zhuo. It seemed that Lady Luck was smiling down on Gu Shijio. However, she also put in a lot of effort to achieve a level 10 spiritual power. Thus, there were not many competitors on this continent now. Perhaps, the responsibilities of this continent would soon be Gu Zijia's, and Celestial Master Zhuo would be the past. Since the Lord spoke for Gu Shijio publicly, the rest had certainly no courage to doubt the result, and they did not dare to share any opinions anymore. Mu Feng brought the young prince out right away as he must be sent to the dark forest according to the rules. Countless pairs of eyes were gazing at Gu Shijio. Some seemed to be relieved and some were envious. Regardless, another test was over. Before leaving, Gu Shijio courteously bowed to the Lord after a complete and flawless ceremony. She then leaped down from the stage without turning back to look at him. Many of her friends were waiting for her in the crowd. Instantly, she was hugged and congratulated. Some were cheering for her in the distance. The Lord was still standing on the stage as he watched her leave with her friends. He knew that from now onward, he had nothing to do with all of her emotions and there was no spot for him in her world. It was him who pushed her away. Hence, this was a natural consequence. While she was depressed from the heartbreak, he was not happy either. Although he did not have countless nightmares like Gu Shijio, he had no one to speak to even though he was just by her side. When she was sad, at least she had friends as her companions. While he was always alone. He turned around and left without turning back. "My lord, I don't get it. Are you trying to push all of Celestial Master Zhuo's responsibilities to Miss Gu?" Mu Feng impatiently asked when he saw Di Fui emerge from the stargazing lab. Di Fui slightly nodded. "Why not?" "So, you have decided to give up this identity?" Mu Feng asked again. "I'm tired of it." Di Fui said only 4 words. Mu Feng was depressed. All the 4 messengers had worked for the Lord about 500 to 600 years. They knew him very well. The Lord was good in everything, however, he got tired or bored very easily regardless what he did. Thus, he had to create many different identities to wander around the world. However, there must be a main identity for each period. For example, he has been using Di Fui in the recent century, while he was a powerful king regent who was hated by the people 100 years ago. When the four of them were recruited a long time ago, he was a hermit who did not get involved in any matter. He would get bored after carrying a particular identity for a period, and then he would find a way to make that identity disappear. Later, he would create another one to replace it and then inherited it to the next generation. However, the Lord would usually create a new identity to slowly replace the previous one when he got bored. Which means he would not pass his main responsibilities to others but would still execute his mission with a new identity. Surprisingly, he decided to pass all the authorities of Celestial Masters Watagu Shijio. What is the Lord trying to do this time? Although the Lord was often unpredictable and always confused others, Mu Feng thought he understood the Lord and was able to understand a little more of his mind most of the time, as he has been his follower for a few centuries. However, he had no idea this time. Finally, he asked after holding back for the whole day, "My lord, we can understand that you are bored with your current identity, but what makes you pass all the authorities to Miss Gu?" Di Fui was sipping his tea in front of a small tea table. He was gazing at the moon and did not seem to care about the question. Chapter 1656. I told you that I'm tired of those tasks. Since Gu Shijio is a talent in this era, might as well let her manage everything without worries. I remembered that you also agreed that she is intelligent and able to handle all these tasks? Mu Feng remained silent. This was the first time that he realized the Lord was tired of the authorities he had. According to the modern logic from Miss Gu, was the Lord planning to retire? That's not possible, right? The Lord would never get old. He was an immortal, and he would live as long as heaven and earth existed. Perhaps, the Lord was tired after so many centuries of work. Hence, it was normal if he wanted to take a break. However, Mu Feng still felt that something was not right, but he could not tell what exactly was wrong. Suddenly, he shifted his gaze to the Lord's hair. The silver hair was as white as snow. Occasionally, the Lord's hair would turn silver, such as when he practiced his spiritual power. However, he has only ever shown up publicly with black hair, and only the four of them have ever seen him with silver hair. Strangely, the Lord liked to appear in public with his silver hair nowadays. My lord, your hair? The Lord took a sip of the tea. What's wrong with my hair? It's always white. I look more handsome with silver hair, I suppose. He then took another sip of tea after answering cheekily. Mu Feng was speechless. Fine, it seems that the Lord's preference has changed again. Anyway, he did look handsome with silver hair. In addition to the Lord's hair turning white, his spiritual power had also been upgraded again since he returned from his private meditation in the Biwu Palace. There was no difference between the Lord who sat in front of Mu Feng today and the one in the prime of his life. The Lord continued to drink the tea while Mu Feng made a report to him. My lord, our spies are keeping an eye on the palace. However, they have not noticed anything strange about Rong Jialua because he runs his activities according to his daily routines. Other than that, he is always having discussions with the imperial officers during their meeting. Although some evil wraiths were trying to make a mess in the palace a while ago, it sounded like everything is fine in the palace after the salvation ceremony performed by Miss Gu. Since then, no one heard about the evil wraiths. Moreover, Rong Jialua has not recruited any concubines. Hence, the internal court is very quiet. Most of the courtyards are empty, and even if they are occupied, it's probably the concubines of the former emperor. There were not many royal maidservants, hence, the population in the palace is only half of the headcount compared to his father's administration. He's considered a hard-working emperor. Our crew has been observing for some time and didn't find any evil spirits. Nothing is wrong with him as well. That was the first thing Mu Feng reported. The Lord spun the teacup in his hand. He has no concubine, so where does he sleep every night? Huxin Palace. Our secret agents always guard the door in the dark after watching him sleep, and they never see him walk out the palace after that. He wakes up at around 5 a.m. every morning to get ready for his imperial meeting. Without exception, the eunuchs, the maids, and the imperial officers are always with him. What about the few hours when he was asleep? No one went in to check? They did, he was fast asleep. The Lord did not speak anymore but pondered. There's also nothing much about the Blue Fox family. The prince from the Blue Fox royal family, Lan Yu, has been busy preparing for his wedding. However, his bride fled last night. Thus, the Blue Fox family is looking for her everywhere. They have not found her. The Lord put down the teacup and smiled after a second. I didn't expect her to have the guts to do so. Mu Feng also nodded. I was shocked too. She's always cowardly and an obedient person. He then sighed. She has not laid Yenchen down. Perhaps she was getting more fearful as the wedding was just around the corner. Finally, she decided to risk everything? It's not easy to lay down feelings if you love someone. Chapter 1657. That was ruthless. But of course, Mu Feng did not say it out. He mumbled silently. The Lord glimpsed at him. Have you truly loved someone before? Mu Feng was speechless. He felt like he had been shocked at a high voltage. The Lord got up and took a glance around. He has been staying in Celestial Masters' mansion for a few decades. It was the time to demolish it. Mu Feng, dismiss everyone in the mansion, we don't need them anymore. Mu Feng paused before answering, yes. The Lord turned around and left. Mu Feng looked around too. Suddenly, he did not feel good inside. When the Lord decided to give up an identity, he would also destroy everything that belonged to that identity. For example, the mansion, the servants, and his friends. Now, it was time to demolish Celestial Masters' mansion. There were not many people left in Celestial Masters' mansion because most of them were dead from the incident caused by the counterfeit. Thus, less than 20% of them survived. Besides that, Di Fui was extremely busy since he returned from the Forbidden Land. Hence, he did not recruit any more servants because he hardly stayed at home. Mu Feng was thinking to start the recruitment again when his lord settled down. However, it seemed to be unnecessary now as he even needed to dismiss the current ones. Compared to Celestial Masters' mansion, Gu Zijia's mansion was extremely happening and crowded these days. Many people came to congratulate her. Gu Shijio would courteously meet them if she were free. However, she would also reject them outright when she was busy. She received news the next day after the test for the Heaven's Gift disciple that Celestial Masters had tendered his resignation letter as Celestial Masters to His Majesty, and none of the imperial officers or the emperor managed to keep him in his position. Gu Shijio was having a drink with her friends when she got the news. She was stunned for a second as she held the glass. However, she did not express any opinion. Gu Zijia's friends always felt it was unfair for Celestial Masters to betray her. Thus everyone applauded and cheered when they heard the news. They even claimed that Celestial Masters must be jealous of her being too strong to the point where she even surpassed him. Hence, he decided to resign. Shijio, he must be very jealous since the Lord prioritizes you very much now. What's there to be jealous about? It's normal for new people to replace old ones. It's time for him to make way for others. Shijio, you must try harder. You must show him your abilities and let him know you can compete with him or be even better than him. Many were laughing and judging, and all of them thought the brat deserved the karma of being replaced. Gu Shijio continued sipping her drinks after a short idle. Casually, she said, perhaps he doesn't even care about this. It seemed that he decided to give up the identity of Di Fui. He wanted to get rid of everything related to Di Fui. The power, the status, and even the relationship. He was just like a professional actor, and Di Fui was the character he needed to play. All the emotions of the character would have to go as the script ended. He retreated handsomely and would not leave a space for this character in his heart. Unfortunately, she fell in love with the character in the drama. Who would he be after he gave up the identity of Celestial Masters? Would he use another identity? Anyway, she had nothing to do with this man anymore. She remembered Mu Feng once mentioned that the Lord would change his identity once in a while. However, no one would remember him again when he changed his identity except the 4 messengers. She lifted her hand and finished the cold wine. When she was about to say something, The directed audio spell at her waist suddenly blinked. She picked up the call at a quiet corner, and her face immediately changed after she listened to the first two phrases. Chapter 1658. Yen-chan was on the other end of the spell. Urgently, Yen-chan asked, "Shijio, is little fox with you now?" Gu Shijio was a little nervous. I thought she had gone to the Blue Fox family? She should be preparing for her wedding now. She fled from the wedding. Gu Shijio remained silent as her head went blank. Gu Shijio just had a call with the little fox, and she told her she was busy preparing for her wedding. Little Fox was always a happy girl who did not like sharing her sorrows. Gu Shijio did not expect the relationship between her and Lan Yu to have developed so fast. Thus she asked, "Do you love him?" Little Fox remained silent for a while before she responded. "I like him," said Little Fox. Under those circumstances, it was not right for Gu Shijio to confuse her. However, she reminded Little Fox to be serious with her marriage and hoped that she would not do something that she would later regret. Of course, in the end, she wished for her to be happy. Throughout their conversation, Little Fox told her that the wedding fell on the 26th of this month. Gu Shijio also planned to depart for her marriage in a few days. To her surprise, Little Fox fled. It was shocking to know that such an obedient person like Little Fox could do something so reckless. Gu Shijio was very surprised, and she finally had a rough idea about the details after talking to Yen-chan. The little fox ran away the day before yesterday, and she did not tell anyone but left a letter for Lan Yu. However, Yen-chan did not know the content because Lan Yu did not mention it. Lan Yu was the king of the Blue Fox family. However, his bride ran away just a few days before their grand wedding. Lan Yu was furious and ordered his people to seal the news from leaking out. He also sent a crew of secret agents to find Lan Weihe because he wanted to bring her back to his place secretly. To Lan Yu, Lan Weihe was a naive girl with no ill intention. Hence, she would probably leave something behind for people to find her when she escaped. The secret agents from the Blue Fox family were very experienced. They believed that they would be able to locate her within 2 days. To their surprise, they still could not find anything even after a thorough 2-day search. Lan Weihe had indeed left the Blue Fox family. All obvious signs had disappeared at a street as though an expert helped her to escape. Finally, Lan Yu thought about Yen-chan after 2 days of searching. He thought Yen-chan was the culprit behind the incident. Hence, he immediately contacted Yen-chan and questioned him about Lan Weihe's whereabouts. In fact, Yen-chan was in a dilemma for the past few days. He felt sorry for Little Fox. He did not dare to ask her back, and yet, he could not lay her down as well. He was very depressed when he heard about her wedding. He could not decide whether he should stop her. Surprisingly, before he could make a decision, he received news that Little Fox had run away. He was so relieved yet anxious when he got the news. Thus, he also began to look for her. After all, he knew Little Fox quite well. She had no family, and she was not a brave girl. Therefore, she would probably contact her friends, Gu Shijio, or himself when she ran away. The biggest possibility was Tianju Hall. Therefore, he immediately contacted the people in Tianju Hall. However, none of her friends in Tianju Hall were aware of this incident. He then continued to contact everyone who knew Little Fox, but no one has seen her. Lastly, he contacted Gu Shijio. Unfortunately, Gu Shijio was not aware of this as well. Yen-chan's voice has changed. Little Fox was different from Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio would not rely on anyone if she fled from her wedding. She would just find somewhere quiet and continue living in a place where no one knew her. It was normal even if they could not find her after a year. However, Little Fox was completely different. She was naive and cowardly. It was almost impossible for her to hide and avoid all of the secret agents as well. Chapter 1659. Perhaps, she was caught in an accident. If Yen-chan could relate to that, Gu Shijio could certainly think about it too. Thus, her expression changed. What accident would Little Fox get into? Who was the one who helped her to escape? What was his intention? The image of Lan Weihe crying out of fear after being kidnapped seemed to appear in front of Gu Shijio. She was terrified. The little fox was one of the people she cared for very much. She had to find her as soon as possible. Therefore, she first contacted Li Mengxia from the Enying Association to assist her in finding Little Fox. Certainly, Li Mengxia would never reject her request. She immediately went out to investigate. Gu Shijio then contacted Lan Yu and asked for more details about Lan Weihe before and after she had gone missing. She made sure he did not miss out a single detail. In the end, she made a summary. First, Lan Weihe was probably having depression after she returned to the Blue Fox family with Lan Yu. She was the daughter of the Blue Fox National Master, and supposedly the heir to the throne of the National Master. Thus, she was pushed up to the throne by Lan Yu not long after they returned to the Blue Fox clan since her kung fu was powerful enough. Also, she accepted the obeisance made by the Blue Fox citizens. However, she was very nervous and stressed because she did not want the responsibilities. She could not handle the responsibilities as a national master, and she was irritated by all the works she had to do to the extent she had plenty of nightmares. Secondly, she was not good at socializing, and she had the bloodline of an ordinary human. Hence, she was often discriminated by the nobles in the Blue Fox family. She felt as though she was forced to take up the responsibilities, and at the same time, countless pairs of eyes were watching her because they wanted to get her into trouble and watch her fall. Unfortunately, she was not good at handling those problems and eventually was embarrassed from messing everything up. She had almost zero friends in the Blue Fox clan other than 2 maidservants who were quite close to her. While Lan Yu began to get himself busy with all the administrative matters of the Blue Fox family, he did not notice the difficulties Lan Weihe was facing that resulted in her being the loneliest national master in the Blue Fox family. Third, Lan Weihe was always protective and alert. With the wizardry barrier outside, no one was allowed to enter or exit. This included outsiders as well as the people from the Blue Fox family. Only 2 people knew how to control the wizardry barrier, Lan Yu and the chief officer of defense. It was impossible for Lan Yu to have helped her escape. However, she did not know the chief officer. Hence, how did Lan Weihe manage to run away without triggering any of the alarms? There was absolutely no trace of her left behind. Gu Shijio made a daring inference based on the 3 points above. Next, Lan Yu interrogated the 2 maidservants. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio rushed to the Blue Fox family with Windcaller. For hours later, Lan Yu updated that something was strange about one of the maidservants. Both of them were originally the most reliable maidservants beside Lan Yu. He assigned them to serve Lan Weihe and also watched her at the same time. However, he did not ask the 2 maidservants to be close to Lan Weihe but only keep an eye on her just in case she ran away or got into trouble. In the beginning, the 2 maidservants kept a distance from Lan Weihe according to Lan Yu's order. However, one of them was getting closer to Lan Weihe. Since Lan Weihe was lonely and depressed, she treated the maidservants better when they were nice to her. Eventually, they talked about almost everything to the extent that Lan Weihe allowed the maidservant to stay in her room at night. Chapter 1660. Since Little Fox had gone missing, the maidservant denied that she was ever close to Little Fox. She even lost part of her memories, and she could not recall what she has shared with Little Fox. 2 hours later, Gu Shijio arrived at the trail in the forest with Windcaller. Lan Yu and Yenchen were there, and both of them were panicking like ants in a hot pot. They were lingering around on the trail to find clues. However, they did not manage to find any. The 2 of them looked as though they had found a treasure and quickly rushed over as they saw Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio had no time to question the 2 of them because she asked Lan Yu to bring the maidservant and the chief officer of defense along for an interrogation. The 2 of them came in a very brief time. After a series of questions, the maidservant looked helpless while the chief officer looked suspicious. There seemed to be no flaw according to their answers, and both of them claimed that they did not know each other. Gu Shijio did not say much but released the mussel and tapped on its shell. "Here, read their memories." The maidservant quickly agreed while the chief officer refused to comply. Something must be wrong. Now, Lan Yu and Yenchen began to suspect him. Lan Yu decided to interrogate the man by himself. Finally, the chief officer of defense told the truth. He said that both he and the maidservant had a special relationship since a month ago. The maidservant would visit him every 3 to 5 days, and they would chit-chat while playing chess. He liked the maidservant. Hence, he secretly opened the main gate of the Blue Fox family for the maidservant and another girl the night before yesterday. The chief officer continuously nodded as he finished and claimed that he did not know the girl who left with the maidservant was the future empress of the Blue Fox family. Otherwise, he would never have let them out. Lan Yu's face turned green and he immediately glared at the maidservant. She shouted and claimed that she was innocent. She even said that she did not know the chief officer and she never sneaked out to date the chief officer. The chief officer had wronged her. The maidservant and the chief officer seemed to fall into a fight soon. Gu Shijio waved to hint at them to be silent and then ordered the muscle to read their minds. From the muscle's analysis, the maidservant really did not date the chief officer, while the chief officer indeed had a special relationship with the maidservant according to their respective memories. Lan Yu was confused as he glimpsed at Gu Shijio and then took a glance at the muscle. Has your muscle malfunctioned? Can it really read minds? The muscle was pissed off. You are the one who has malfunctioned. You're useless. I've never made a mistake in this era. Gu Shijio lightly took a breath and asked Lan Yu to retain them. After they left with the guard, Gu Shijio continued, if I am not mistaken, the maidservant was possessed at night and then went out to seduce the chief officer. Instantly, Lan Yu and Yen Chen were shocked. Lan Yu quickly asked, how is it possible? Who could do this? Wu Yen. Gu Shijio answered succinctly. Yen Chen's expression immediately changed. You mean the lady who camouflaged you? Gu Shijio slightly nodded. If there is no mistake in my rationale, she's the one who kidnapped Little Fox. Yen Chen was speechless while his face turned pale. Back then, Wu Yen worked under Mo Zhao, and she once possessed Gu Zijia's original body to seek an opportunity to kill Di Fui. However, their plan was unraveled and in the end, Di Fui ruined their plan. Yen Chen knew most of the details of the incident. Hence, his heart immediately sank as he heard that she was the one who kidnapped Little Fox. Chapter 1661. Wu Wen was very cunning, and her endurance was extremely high. Besides that, she was very loyal to Mo Zhao. Little Fox was probably... I thought Mo Zhao is dead? Is Wu Wuyen kidnapping Little Fox out of revenge? Would she have any other intention? Yen Chen's fingers were clenched tightly. Gu Shijio took a breath. She remembered Di Fui once said Mo Zhao would take 40 to 50 years to resurrect. However, it was only 9 years since he died. Hence, Mo Zhao should not be the culprit. However, what Di Fui failed to include was the fact that Mo Zhao was an omen born from heavy sorrow. If the world was operating peacefully, he probably needed to take 40 to 50 years to resurrect. Unfortunately, the continent was in chaos, and many died when Di Fui and Gu Zijiu were trapped in the Forbidden Land. These were sorrowful times. The evil energy from the sorrow were premium nutrients for the omen to restore its spirit. Perhaps, that resulted in the early revival of the omen. Of course, it might only be Wu Wen. However, everything was still unknown. It was still okay if Wu Wen was the only one plotting against them. It would be a disaster if Mo Zhao was the main culprit. Regardless of the intention, the most important thing to do now is to find Little Fox. Gu Shijio grunted. She went on a quick linger on the trail, but everything seemed to have been destroyed. Even if Wu Wuyen had left some clues, so many people have searched the place, so it is possible that the clues are now useless. She glimpsed at Lan Yu and asked, "What have your people found?" Lan Yu shook his head. "Nothing. The Blue Fox family has a tracing beast and it's very sensitive to odor. It could find anyone based on Theodora's long as it was less than 2 days since they went missing. The tracing beast could find that person even if the target ran through a crowded market. However, it did not want to continue anymore when it came here." Gu Shijio added with a frown, "How long after she left did you send the tracing beast to find her?" "We sent the tracing beast out to find her the day after we realized she was gone. We only found this place after a day of searching." "1 day? It took so long?" Lan Yu heaved a sigh. Little Fox changed her odor when she ran away so the tracing beast couldn't stop wandering in the palace. Later, I realized something was wrong, so I brought the tracing beast out from the palace and finally found it here. Had she changed her odor again when she came here? Lan Yu shook his head. The blue fox family has a way to change their odor, but it can only last for about an hour, and it could not be changed again in the next 3 days. We suspect she has got into a flying vehicle after she came here. Lu Wu, who was wandering around like an adult, suddenly joined the conversation. No. It has been 5 days since the last flying vehicle passed by. Lan Yu paused for a second and continued, how did she leave then? Regardless of what kind of vehicle she took, the tracing beast would definitely find it as long as it was a land transport. Gu Shijio pondered. Is it possible to perform the ground drilling technique in the compound of the blue fox family? Lan Yu shook his head again. No, there's a wizardry barrier underground, she can't escape with ground drilling. Suddenly, he seemed to recall something. Unless you meant that she escaped with ground drilling after she ran out from the city? Only people with a level 9 spiritual power could perform that technique anyway. Little Fox was still far from level 9 though. What if the kidnapper possessed a level 9 spiritual power? Gu Shijio asked. Lan Yu could not speak a word. Chapter 1662. Although Yan Chen was in a state of panic, he could still hold himself together and think clearly. Wu Wen should have someone assisting her. I am betting that she was responsible for luring Little Fox out and then someone else brought her away. Meanwhile, Wu Wuyan continued to manipulate the maidservant's body until the maidservant returned to the blue fox family. She probably left secretly after that. Gu Shijio nodded. People with level 9 spiritual power can only use the ground drilling technique alone and won't be able to bring someone along. One must possess level 9.5 or above to bring someone along. Thus, her assistant must be an expert. That was a very well-planned trap. Regardless of whether Wu Wuyen or the assistant came up with it, they were both prepared. Seeing the extent of the plan, it must have been orchestrated over a month ago. The question that everyone was trying to figure out now was why they wanted Little Fox. It was strange for them to go through all that hassle to get her. Perhaps. Gu Shijio shifted her gaze to Lan Yu. Is there any other special traits about Little Fox's bloodline? She knew that a normal human could enhance their physique and upgrade their spiritual power if they married blue fox women. In other words, if the original physique of a man could only go up to level 5 of spiritual power, it could be maximized to level 8 if the man had sex with blue fox women. Therefore, the men in this continent were proud of marrying any blue fox women. However, this applied to all the blue fox women. Hence, Gu Shijio knew this could not be the only reason. Lan Yu was stunned by Gu Zijia's question. I hope you can come clean to me, especially in times like this. I need to know everything and it has to be the truth. Lan Yu took a breath and sighed as he took a glimpse at Yan Qin. Finally, he decided to tell the truth. Little Fox is the daughter of the National Master, while the bloodline of the National Master is so much purer than the normal blue fox women. Therefore, a man can not only enhance his physique if he has sex with her but can also immediately upgrade his spiritual power. Yan Chen's face immediately changed as he glared at Lan Yu with his fingers clenched in his sleeves. Is that the reason you forced her to marry you? Lan Yu coughed and added, I like her too. He liked her too. The main reason Lan Yu wanted to marry her was still because of her bloodline. Everything else was secondary. Yan Chen closed his eyes momentarily as he tried to suppress his anger. He should not have let her go so easily. His Little Fox deserved the best man to pamper her with his sincere heart. Now, he had no idea who was the one who kidnapped her and whether she suffered any abuse. Was she terrified? Did she cry? Lan Wei's blood has another function. Suddenly, someone spoke in Gu Zijia's mind. Gu Shijio immediately shifted her gaze to the firmament stone. It finally woke up. What's it? Her blood can purify anything by eliminating all the negative factors. I'm sure you know the cultivators from the evil clans would lose control over themselves when they have to carry out many cruel tasks. Well, Lan Wei's blood can calm their minds and prevent from losing control, hence, they will be able to do any cruel tasks after they drink their blood. The firmament stone generally explained the knowledge to Gu Shijio. Gu Zijia's fingers immediately clenched tightly. If Little Fox's captors only wanted to have sex with her to upgrade their spiritual power, she would still be alive. However, if the kidnapper wanted her blood, things could be really bad. Hence, Lan Yu, Yan Qin, and Gu Shijio had to get this thing resolved as soon as possible, and they could not afford to delay a single minute. Now, all the pointers were pointing at Wu Win. However, Gu Shijio did not know much about Wu Win. Back then, she suffered amnesia when Wu Win possessed her original body, and when she returned from the underground palace, she realized her original body was already sealed in the crystal coffin by Di Fui. Therefore, she did not know how Wu Win left her body, and she also never asked. The obvious thought in her mind now was that she had to ask Di Fui about it. If it were not absolutely necessary, Gu Shijio would never want to contact Di Fui. However, this was related to Little Fox's safety. Finally, she has made up her mind. She took a breath with the jade tablet on her hand and began to connect. Chapter 1663. The jade tablet was blinking and it was finally connected after a while. 2 words were heard from the other end in a casual tone. "What's up?" Gu Shijio paused for a second and asked directly, "Back then, how did you settle Wu Win?" "She ran away. I couldn't find her." Di Fui did not hide anything. It was hard to believe someone could escape from Di Fui. Was Wu Win so capable? "How did she escape?" "I passed her to my subordinate when I had to save you. However, she was already gone and left your original body behind when I returned. I did try to call her soul, but nothing was detected. Perhaps she found another body. What's going on? Why are you asking about her so randomly?" "Little Fox has gone missing. I suspect she is involved." Gu Shijio told him about her speculation. It was silent on the other end. Suddenly he asked, "Where are you now?" Gu Shijio frowned because she did not want to explain too much to Di Fui and she did not want to talk about anything that was not relevant to the incident. What's Wu Wan's spiritual power? Does she know the ground drilling technique? She was at level 8 when she left, and she didn't know ground drilling. Gu Shijio took a breath. It seemed that her speculation was right and someone was helping Wu Wen. Was it really Mo Zhao? Mo Zhao wanted to resurrect completely, hence, he sent Wu Wen to kidnap Little Fox. But where would they go with Little Fox? Was Little Fox still alive? Gu Zijia's heart was burning as she looked at Yan Qin, who was staring at her. One often got panicked when he was involved in an emergency. Yan Qin, who used to be calm, was now very pale and his fingers were trembling. His mind went blank and he was completely lost. He had to put all bets on Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio was always a capable person. Hence, if anyone could save Little Fox, it was her. However, Little Fox must be so terrified and helpless now. He blamed himself for not being able to stay by her side when she needed someone. He wished he could protect her. Usually, Little Fox would always hide behind him whenever she was in danger, while he would usually protect her whenever there was a dangerous situation. However, he was so helpless now, and he did not even know where exactly she could be. What if she does not make it? Yan Qin did not dare to overthink. He did not seem to notice that his fingernails had poked into his palms and blood was dripping down. "Shijio, how can we find her? Tell me, I'll follow." He just could not wait to take action, but he had no idea where to start. Lan Yu frowned too, with his lips pursed tightly. "She has been missing for 3 days. Perhaps she has been forced to. 3 days were more than enough for the kidnapper to force her to have sex. Even if they find her, she would not be a virgin anymore." He was outraged as well. However, he could keep himself calm. "We need to find her. I just want her to live, and nothing else is more important than that." Yan Qin interrupted Lan Yu. Lan Yu added icily, "She is my empress, everything about her is very important to me. Especially her virginity." Yan Qin was speechless. He looked very pale and decided not to speak anymore. "She is still alive." Suddenly, Di Fui's voice was heard from the jade tablet in Gu Zijia's hand. Yan Chen's eyes sparkled. How do you know? Asked Yan Chen. Di Fui did not answer but asked, tell me your exact location. I'm heading there. Therefore, Yan Chen quickly reported their location. Di Fui was really fast because he took less than an hour to get there. Chapter 1664. When Di Fui arrived, Gu Shijio was busy checking the surroundings with Lu Wu and the muscle. She finally found something different this time because Lu Wu smelled something that carried the aura from the mermaids. Mermaids dominated the ocean and they hardly went up to the land. Besides that, those who could go up to the land were usually the elites or the leaders of the mermaids. Since the aura was relatively weak, Lu Wu could not identify the exact time the aura was left there. However, Lu Wu could tell that the mermaid just appeared randomly and disappeared again. Strangely, its aura had combined with Little Fox's aura. Did the mermaid just pass by here coincidentally, or was it involved in the case? Di Fui came alone, and he appeared out of the blue beside the muscle. The muscle had secretly caught a wild rabbit, and it was ready to satisfy its tongue. However, it was frightened and shocked when it suddenly saw Di Fui, who was wearing a purple robe, and almost got choked by the wild rabbit. It quickly tried its best to swallow the rabbit. Celestial Master Zhua. Di Fui glared at him. Casually, he said, I'm no longer Celestial Master Zhua. The muscle was confused. It used to address him this way. How else would the muscle address him? Di Fui did not bother it but looked at the other three at the scene. Anyone can tell me what exactly happened here? Gu Shijio and Lu Wu did not bother to answer him because they were checking on some stains in front of the bushes. On the other hand, Yan Chen was not good at speaking, hence, Lan Yu courageously explained everything in detail from the beginning to the end. Di Fui glimpsed at Gu Shijio just as she finished checking on the clue that they found. Their gazes met each other. Gu Shijio looked calm and normal while Di Fui's gaze seemed rather dim. What say you? Asked Di Fui. Gu Shijio was very straightforward. After checking around, I realized there were some torn branches, and it seems that some intense fight happened here. Lu Wu could smell the aura of Little Fox and a mermaid in one of the bushes. If my analysis is correct, Little Fox was kidnapped by a mermaid who used the ground drilling technique. Yan Chen was stunned to learn that a mermaid was involved. The mermaids would not simply come to the land. Why would they kidnap Little Fox? He then walked around the bushes and realized the bushes were perfectly fine, and he did not see any torn branches. He immediately looked at Gu Shijio and wondered whether her eyes were working. Lan Yu was also confused. He had instructed his people to search the area multiple times, but they did not even find a single strand of hair, not to mention any sign of an intense fight. Di Fui walked over and took a look. He flicked his fingers, and a beam of light flashed across the scene. The perfect bushes immediately turned messy. Someone had covered the bushes with magic. Hence, an intense fight did happen here because they also found a few spots of dark brown blood stains. Lu Wu quickly ran over and smelled the blood stains. Confidently, it said, this blood belongs to Lan Weihu. Oh wait, this one belongs to the mermaid. It seems like the mermaid was also injured, but Lan Weihu's injury was more serious. Gu Shijio frowned. Lan Weihu possessed a level 8 of spiritual power. However, she was cowardly. Thus, she might not be able to use 70% of her power if no one was there to guide her. Based on her kung fu ability and the knowledge above, if she could also hurt the mermaid, that means the mermaid's power was not that high either. Perhaps the mermaid's power was below level 9. Chapter 1665. Without a level 9 spiritual power, how could the mermaid kidnap Lan Weihu with the ground drilling technique? Aqua drilling, said Di Fui. The three of them immediately looked at him. Di Fui added, the mermaids are very good at aqua drilling. As long as there's water underground, they can escape with anyone. Yan Chen and Lan Yu looked at each other. There must be water underground, however, they could not follow the mermaid because they never learned aqua drilling. Gu Shijio paused and realized that she knew the aqua drilling technique. After all, she had Lan Jing's memories in her head. However, the water flow underground was very complicated with multiple branches. Hence, She could not find Little Fox's aura nor the mermaids even though she could go underground. Lu Wu could find their aura, but it could not swim, hence, it would probably die from suffocation if it went underground. Perhaps, she could ask Lan Yaoguang to help? After all, he knew the most about the mermaids. Besides that, he could also help to check if any mermaids traveled to land recently. Lately, Lan Yaoguang was quite close to Gu Shijio. He swung by her residence twice a month. Regardless of whether Gu Shijio acknowledged him as her younger brother or not, he insisted on addressing her as his sister. One should never hurt someone with good intention. Thus, Gu Shijio could not show Lan Yaoguang with her anger even though she did not want to be Lan Jinka. Moreover, she silently acknowledged him as her brother. In fact, Lan Yaoguang had given her a paging shell so that it was easier for them to keep in touch. Suddenly, Di Fui grabbed Gu Zijia's hand just when she was about to take out the paging shell. Let's find Little Fox using aqua drilling. Di Fui was always fast when he had to take action. Before Gu Shijio could respond to him, she had a blackout. When she could open her eyes to have a clearer view, she already heard the sound of water flowing, and she saw a big undercurrent in front of her. Gu Shijio was speechless. She subconsciously initiated the aqua drilling technique and then withdrew her hand. She did not want to have any physical contact with him anymore. She needed to stay calm. Gu Zijia's priority was to find Little Fox. What now? Di Fui took out a wizardry shell and blew once. Instantly, the water around them began to gush to the east. There. Di Fui put his wizardry shell away and stretched his hand toward Gu Shijio. Let me bring you. It's fine, and good. Gu Shijio turned around and moved toward the water's direction. She was quite good at aqua drilling. Her body was like an apparition that disappeared in the blink of an eye. Di Fui remained silent for a few seconds as he looked at his empty hand. He then shook his head and immediately rushed toward that direction. After traveling for 7 to 8 miles, he finally saw Gu Shijio waiting for him ahead. He rushed over and realized there were 4 to 5 branches further ahead. No wonder she was willing to wait for him. She quietly waited there for him to show her their next direction when he came over. She really treated him like a normal friend now. In fact, it did not even seem to be a normal friend but rather an acquaintance. She was very cold but courteous. That was what he wanted, and he was the one who caused all this mess. He smiled and then took out his wizardry shell again. This time, he explained to her, when you blow this shell with water spiritual power, it can sense whether any mermaid passed by the water here. Nah, try it yourself. He passed the shell to her. Gu Shijio refused to take it. Just do it. He had blown on the shell with his saliva on it earlier, hence, she did not want to kiss him indirectly. Chapter 1666 Casually, Di Fui added, You want to find your friend, and I'm just helping you. The hidden meaning was, are you not embarrassed to just waste so much of my spiritual power? Gu Shijio was speechless. She took the wizardry shell over quietly and then secretly applied a cleaning spell on it. She then blew it with water spiritual power, however, there was no response. She looked at him. Although there was not even a tiny spot of light underground, based on their kung fu, they could see everything even though they were in the dark. Thus, Di Fui could see her clear eyes. It was big and round with very clear pupils. Her skin was fair, and her lips were pinkish. As she stood in the water, she looked more beautiful to him than the prettiest mermaid in the world. Di Fui shifted his gaze away and taught her the way to blow the wizardry shell in the water. He explained all the details while she paid complete attention to him. When he was teaching her, their bodies were very close to each other because there were many details to be explained. They were so close to the extent that Di Fui could smell the light fragrance on her. Fortunately, they did not have any physical contact because Gu Shijio was very alert and she tried to avoid any possible contact at all cost. Gu Shijio also smelled his odor, which she was once very familiar with. However, the smell made her feel as if someone was stabbing her wound. She frowned and temporarily sealed her sense of smell to prevent herself from being annoyed again. Gu Shijio had always been a fast learner. Very soon, she mastered the technique and took charge of detecting the mermaid's aura. Suddenly, A question popped up in her head. Oh, by the way, since Little Fox doesn't know aqua drilling, would she die during the journey? How did the mermaid manage to kidnap her? Di Fui took a glimpse at her. You can try to find the answer from your memories. Gu Zijia's fingers were clenched. Indeed, she had part of Lan Jing's memories. However, she subconsciously put it away as she did not want to recall anything between Di Fui and her. If it were not for Little Fox, she would not ever want to use aqua drilling. Di Fui just could not help but urge her to think about Lan Jing's memories. Did he think that it was not hurtful enough for her? Or did he want to turn her into Lan Jinka? Again, she had a cold look on her face as the annoyance crept in. That's not my memories. I don't want to dig through it, just forget about it if you don't want to answer. Just pretend I never asked. She turned around and rapidly moved ahead. Di Fui remained silent. It seemed that she was still very sensitive. He did not think about it and triggered her wounds again. He sighed and then made an effort to quickly catch up to her. When he finally found her, he simply explained, the mermaid could escape by engulfing the human in a bubble. The air in the bubble can last for about an hour. Gu Shijio finally understood. So, if the mermaid didn't want Little Fox to die, he or she would need to breathe on land in intervals. As soon as they finished talking, the two of them had passed 7 to 8 junctions, and it was more than 100 miles from where they started. Suddenly, the water gushed up vertically when they blew the wizardry shell again. Needless to ask, the mermaid had brought Little Fox up to the land. Thus, they immediately left the underground and went up to the land. Surprisingly, it was a sea of flowers outside with many unknown flowers scattered all over the hill. The exit from the underground was a big lake. It was nightfall. Under the moonlight, the lake looked shiny in the breezy night. The scene was as beautiful as an art masterpiece. A couple of lovebirds went out for a date during the sunset and only left when the moon was up above the willow tree. The scene was indeed beautiful. Both of them had numerous romantic experiences together since they met. Back then, their hearts were filled with love, and she wished there was a day like this every year in her life. However, when she saw this scene again, she felt countless thorns stuck in her heart. Chapter 1667. Gu Shijio took a deep breath. She tried to suppress the frustration inside her and began to search around. It was easier to find clues here because no one would have interfered with anything. In a brief time, she found the clues related to the mermaid and Little Fox. There were torn branches scattered there, and Gu Shijio inferred that it was left there since 2 days ago. She also predicted that Little Fox must have been under someone's control. However, the mermaid who kidnapped her did not seem to have a relaxing journey. He or she has been resting here for a period of time. Di Fui was watching her looking for clues, and she did not turn around to check on him at all. She lived a great life now, and would probably live an even better one in the future. After a few years, she would completely forget about him. She would live for many years while the relationship between him and her would be just a short story in her long life. Perhaps, she would find someone who could be with her forever in the future and fight side by side with her just like what they had gone through together back in the old days. He remembered that she has once mentioned that it was fine for a lady to find a jerk. However, she must know when to let go and forget about the jerk and then live a better life. He also remembered that she said time was the best medicine for pain because all types of pain would fade and disappear as time passed. He remembered many things that she said. Although he did not use to bother to remember those small things, he remembered everything she said and he would never forget them. He decided to sit on a green rock and watch her. Stopping himself from being near to her was such a difficult task for him. He really wished to see her as long as he could in his lifetime. Even if she never gives him a smile, even if she was just talking and laughing with other men, or even if she just treated him as a stranger. He looked at his hands and realized he has never felt so stupid before. After Gu Shijio finished checking the surrounding, she turned around and realized that Di Fui was sitting with a fruit platter in front of him. There were 4 types of fruits on the plate and 2 were once her favorite fruits. Gu Shijio had a sweet tooth, hence, she liked fruits with high sugar content. Back then he always prepared fruits for her, especially her favorites. He wanted to help her restore her energy anytime and anywhere. Di Fui looked back at her and then threw a golden pear to her. Take a pear to restore your energy. The aqua drilling technique consumed a lot of energy. Thanks. Gu Shijio flicked her sleeve and the pear immediately flew back to him. She took out an apple from her storage bag and began to chew on it as she sat on a rock. Di Fui looked at the pear in his hand and then looked at her. Smilingly, he said, "Celestial Master Gu, we are just partners who work together now. I have no other intention, so you don't have to draw such a line between us." It was just a pear. Did she need to do that? Gu Shijio did not even bother to lift her head as she responded, "It doesn't matter whether there's a line or not, I just don't want to eat the pear. You once liked it very much. As you said, I liked it before but not anymore. Everyone's food preference can change." When she finished talking, she had eaten half of her apple. The fruit tasted more sour than sweet, and it was a little bitter toward the end. However, she really liked the taste recently. One would find it difficult to bear with pain if they had too much sweetness in their life. In fact, how would life only be filled with sweetness? Gu Shijio looked pitiful as she was sitting there eating the apple. It was as though she was an abandoned young beast which tried very hard to live independently. She looked tough yet fragile, and that made people feel sympathetic for her. Chapter 1668. Abruptly, Di Fui looked away and asked, "What have you discovered?" There are two different sets of footprints. One set belongs to Little Fox, and the other belongs to the mermaid. I can recognize Little Fox's footprints. As for the mermaid, the footprints are not too deep or too big. I assume that these footprints belong to a woman of not more than 163 centimeters, and her weight would be. She had precisely predicted the weight and height of the woman. Then, her eyes rested on Di Fui. "You know who she is, right?" Di Fui did not deny. "I know. If I am not mistaken, she should be Lan Jingyi. She has been missing for 5 days." To guess the identity correctly was one thing, to hear his confession was another. Gu Shijio took a deep breath before she continued, "You are only here with me because you are looking for Lan Jingyi, aren't you?" Di Fui was very non-committal about her question. "What is the difference? Regardless of my intention, we are all sharing the same goal." She was right. She was looking for Little Fox, and he was looking for Lan Jingyi. Of different means, they were working to achieve the same end. It did not come as a surprise to Gu Shijio anymore that he offered his help so eagerly. Gu Shijio tried to calm down. She already felt bad enough, as though there was a lump in her throat. She could no longer finish the other half of her apple. She threw the apple away and stood up. She took a look around on the ground, trying to look for the water source to perform the aqua drilling technique. Di Fui stood and tidied up his robes. He then picked up the unfinished apple that she left behind on the ground. The apple was already dirty after taking a few rolls on the dirt. Di Fui cleaned the fruit a little and took a bite. The fruit tasted sour and astringent. It was her least favorite flavor. She liked the taste now all of a sudden. Was it a reflection of how she truly felt inside? He kept the unfinished apple in his storage bag and performed the water manipulation magic as well. Gu Shijio was very fast, so Di Fui was 15 minutes behind her. When Di Fui finally caught up with her, she was pretty calm. She saw Di Fui and frowned a little. "Perhaps we should go separate ways to speed things up," she said nonchalantly. She did not want to be on the same path as him anymore. They have used the same waterway. There is no need to chase after them separately, Di Fui said firmly. Immediately, Gu Shijio passed the wizardry shell to him. "If you are here looking for someone, too, you should not say that you are here to help. You should contribute as well. If they were both looking for someone they cared for, why should she be the only one making the effort?" Di Fui did not expect that she would mind it. He hesitated, then passed magic shell back to her. Promptly, he took out another one. "I have one more. We can take turns to blow the shells. Now we are even." Gu Shijio did not know what to say, as he was trying to make things clear between them. He refused to take any kind of losses on his own. Anyway, she did not want to take advantage of him, so she agreed. They continued to move forward. At every junction, both of them would blow the magic shell to observe the ripples. None of them took advantage of anyone. It was the first time for Gu Shijio to use the instrument. Certainly, she would make some mistakes now and then and point it at the wrong way. Luckily, Di Fui had a very strong perceptive insight, so he could always correct her in time whenever she made the slightest misjudgment. Thus, none of them made any wrong turns. Unless the situation was really necessary, none of them talked to each other at all. Unknowingly, they had traveled many miles underground. Chapter 1669. Occasionally, Gu Shijio and Di Fui would exit the underground and go to the surface to take a few breaths. They attentively checked the traces which clearly showed that they were on the right path. Executing the aqua drilling technique was very physically draining. Even though Gu Zijia's spiritual power was already very advanced, her physical capability was still incomparable to Di Fui's. Toward the end, it was Di Fui who did everything, blowing the magic shell and checking the ripples. Gu Shijio was only following him around. Perhaps she had been in the underground waterway for too long. Gu Shijio started to feel a pain in her stomach. It started mildly at first, but it gradually became more severe. It could be her menstrual pain, but if it were, then it would be the severest of its kind. It was as though a knife was slowly slashing through her internals. She was in such great pain that she broke out in cold sweats. She was skilled in medicine after all. Even though she had never experienced the pain, she knew exactly what was happening. She had not been having her period for the past 6 months, which was most probably due to her extreme emotional roller coaster. She almost thought that her period had disappeared for good, for her spiritual power was strong enough to get rid of it once and for all. However, her current pain in the stomach reminded her that it was the time of the month again. This was not good timing to have a period. She had to slow down to regulate her breathing. She directed the flow of her spiritual power to her lower abdomen to slowly ease the pain. On the other hand, Di Fui was taking the lead and moving fast. Gu Shijio was eager to see Little Fox, so she quickly went along with him. If this happened in the past, she would make him hold her. She would also request for his medical attention. While they were together for the past 8 years, she would easily make him hold or, at least, take her hand whenever she felt the slightest discomfort. Sometimes he would even have to carry her on his back. Those were all her delicate times. He was always there to be her most reliable support and protection. Now that he was no longer her support, she had to support herself. Even though she was in pain, she had to grit her teeth and go through the hardship on her own. The pain was so unbearable that her legs were starting to feel weak. She was starting to suffer from temporary blackouts but refused to say anything. She thought to herself that she would endure the remaining miles of their journey. She would treat herself when they were back to the surface. Distracted, she certainly did not see Di Fui, who had just made an abrupt stop. She was caught off guard and bumped into him. She was a little lightheaded from the impact of their collision. Intuitively, she took a few steps backward. Before recovering from the dizziness, she could feel someone holding onto her hand tightly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Why did you stop so suddenly?" Perplexed, she frowned in disbelief. She wanted to pull her hand away. However, Di Fui was reluctant to let her go. "Your complexion does not seem right. What's wrong?" He quickly held onto her wrist to read her pulse. Gu Shijio struggled to break free from his hold but failed, so she started to lose her temper instead. "Let me go. Di Fui, I am telling you now that a man and woman should not have any physical contact." The struggle made her condition even worse. Her face grew paler and she was in more pain. She was not able to endure the pain any longer. Quickly, she bent her body down, hoping that it could ease the pain. In an instant, she forgot that she had to use the aqua drilling technique and drowned. Di Fui said nothing further. He pulled her close into his arms and rushed upward to the surface. When the pain faded, she found herself safely on the ground. It was a vast coverage of brilliant white snow. The place was also surrounded by enchanting red plum. They were now in a plum park on a snow mountain. It was unusually cold in an otherwise warm early spring. Snow started to fall. Chapter 1670. The snowflakes floated lightly in the air and fell gently on the petals of the plum flowers. The distinctive colors set each other off, making the reds more delightfully charming and the whites even more enchanting. The clusters of red flowers looked even more attractive in the nightlight with the touch of white snow. Gu Shijio was not in the mood to enjoy the perfectly scenic view of red plum flowers in the snow. The pain was too much for her to bear. "Are you on your period?" Di Fui held onto her wrist tightly to read her pulse. "None of your business." His hands were warm, but she was somewhat irritated by his touch, especially now that she was already frustrated by her discomfort. She struggled, and finally, she broke free from his grasp. Groggily, she took a few quick steps backward and saw a green rock next to her. Without noticing if there was snow on the rock, she quickly sat on it. Before she managed to sit, Di Fui was already holding her up, preventing her from sitting on the rock. "The surface of the rock is cold. You cannot suffer from the cold at the moment." Then he raised his arms and performed a spell to create a wizardry barrier. Within the bubble, there was a soft, fluffy wool blanket to keep her warm when she sat on it. He took out a red pill and put it next to her mouth. "Take the pill." Instinctively, Gu Shijio was afraid of all the pills that were given by him. She turned her head around to avoid his hand. "I have my own pills." She held on firmly despite the extreme pain and searched for the pills in her storage bag. She found one pale red pill and swallowed it. The pill was supposed to make her warm. The evil effects of the cold must have affected her when she was in the underground waterway, which had further worsened her menstrual pain. She wanted to meditate, but the extreme pain distracted her. She could not even sit well. Her fingers were trembling when she wanted to perform the spell. Di Fui grabbed her hands tightly and said, "Sit well so that I can ease your pain." Gu Shijio was still struggling to keep her distance. "As I said, we are now a team, so I cannot disregard the pain that you are suffering." "I mean no harm," Di Fui explained. Sweat broke out on her forehead, but her eyes were shining brightly, for she knew what she was doing. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. "Thank you. You can continue the search for yourself. Leave me alone." Di Fui was capable enough to continue the search on his own. It was unnecessary to drag Gu Shijio along. She really did not want to work alongside him anyway. Also, she refused to have any physical contact with him. Without further ado, Di Fui pointed and sealed her acupuncture point to calm her down. Then, he took her hands and sat her down face to face. Their palms were in touch to connect the flow of his spiritual power into her body. His spiritual power slowly entered her circulation and reached out to her abdomen. The internals of her abdomen was as cold as ice. Her organs were cramping in pain. His spiritual power was a stream of warmth to cure this effect. It entered her abdomen and started to demonstrate its warming effects. Soon, the cramps around her abdomen started to ease and gradually disappeared. A few moments later, Di Fui finally let go of her hand and removed the seal on her acupuncture point. "How are you feeling now?" he asked. "I am feeling better. Thank you." Gu Shijio heaved a gentle sigh of relief and rose. As the pain had been going on for too long, her body was still weak. She quickly moved around to exercise her cramped muscles. Di Fui continued to observe her pale face. "How long have you been in pain? Why didn't you say anything earlier?" Gu Shijio shook her head firmly. "There is no need." "There is no need? Should we wait until you had fainted to make it sound more necessary?" Gu Shijio looked at him fixedly. She continued with a half-smile, "Are you concerned with my well-being?" Di Fui disregarded her glare and said nonchalantly, "You are overthinking. As I said, we are now a team. We are doing this for the same goal." Chapter 1671. Since we are a team, it is preferable that we are both at our best. We should not be a burden to each other in times of danger. You were suffering from great pain, but you chose to say nothing. If you passed out at a disastrous point of crisis, you would become the biggest burden. Gu Shijio answered with a smile, "I am not overthinking, so there is no need for you to explain everything so eagerly. I will not blame you for anything. You can rest assured that you are only a team member to me, nothing more. When the time comes, you will save the one you care for, and I will do the same. I will not put you into any trouble or become your burden. She must have been crazy to ask if he still cared. By now, she reminded herself not to overthink to prevent any further disappointments. She took a look around, as the place seemed a little familiar. She did not think twice about it and proceeded to stretch even more. She wanted to return to the underground waterway. Di Fui pulled her back and prohibited her from entering the waterway. You should not dive into the waterway again. Your body is too weak to endure the underground cold. Gu Shijio frowned in bewilderment. Should we work separately? You continue to track the traces in the waterway and update me if you find anything, all right? Her suggestion was a good one. Di Fui observed the surrounding and had one of his flashes of inspiration. The redness of the plum flowers was unusually bright. In the dim light of the night, the flowers seemed to associate with the forces of evil. He plucked a flower and put it closer to his nose to smell its scent. Within its delicate fragrance, he found something more, something that resembled the smell of blood. The bloody scent was rather weak. Had Di Fui not brought it closer, he would not realize it. Perhaps the criminal's lair is somewhere close by. Di Fui slowly said, "Be careful." Gu Shijio was hit by a sudden realization too. The plum garden was the one she had been to before. It was 110 miles away from the capital city of the Feishan Kingdom. When she was last here, she could tell that the redness in these flowers was rather odd. Before she could observe the flowers, Long Sai's news came and distracted her. The plum garden was vast. The entire area was a few hundred acres. Within the garden, the flowers were arranged in a crisscross pattern. The small trails spread out in all directions. It was the plum blossom, so the visitors came in an endless stream to see the flowers. The footprints of the garden were all over the ground with no semblance of order. It would be very difficult for them to track the footprints. Wait here. I will go and take a look. Di Fui turned around and went into the waterway. A few moments later, he resurfaced. This is the final stop of their track. There are no more traces in the water. Gu Shijio leaped from the top of the plum tree. The plum trees here seem to associate with the forces of evil. There is something odd about the place here. Maybe they are close by. The place seemed completely fine during the day, other than the usual brightness of the red flowers. However, it was different during the night. Bit by bit, the sense of evil started to show. Gu Shijio was careful enough to notice the difference. She plucked a twig of plum flower, and a wisp of red brilliance oozed out at the point of the wreckage. The smell of blood grew stronger. Gu Zijia's heart sank. Was it possible that the place was irrigated by blood? Was Mo Zhao's hiding place nearby? Was Lan Jingyi forced to kidnap Little Fox? Or did she volunteer to work with Mo Zhao? Was Little Fox still alive? Gu Shijio was very worried about Little Fox's safety. They are still alive. Di Fui seemed to notice her concern, so he quickly reassured her. Gu Shijio was relieved. Lan Jingyi is the culprit. She surely will not be harmed. I am only worried about Little Fox. I need to get her back safely. If anything happens to her, I will never forgive Lan Jingyi. She finished her sentence with a firm, icy tone. Chapter 1672, Lan Jingyi is the sister of Jinka. Jinka loved her the most when she was alive. I made a promise to take care of both her brother and sister for the rest of their lives. Di Fui continued in an icy tone, Gu Shijio, you'd better dismiss the idea of harming her. Gu Zijia's face was pale, but she still responded with a smile. No one can ever scheme against my friend and expect no revenge from me. What if I insist that I will avenge her? Di Fui turned around. I will, in turn, insist that your friends will be harmed as well. He ignored her and went straight into the garden to look for their traces. Gu Shijio stood very still. Her fingers were trembling by her side. She would not mind if it were her that he threatened to harm. She was ready to risk everything. Furthermore, she was curious about what he would do to her. Would he kill her? Would he imprison her? Would he even confine her? She did not care as long as he hurt her. However, it was her friends that he targeted. He was a man of his words. What else could she do? Her willful acts of damage had got Long Sai into trouble once. Because of her, his spiritual power had been significantly reduced. He even lost his status as a Heaven's Gift disciple. Would she get the rest of her friends into other trouble? Therefore, she could never take her revenge against Lan Jingyi. Even if Little Fox was dead, she could not make Lan Jingyi pay for her death. She could not tell how she truly felt right now, whether it was frustration, grief, or helplessness. The thought filled her with indignation. She took a deep breath, trying to suppress her resentment over his threat. She told herself that there was nothing to be mad or sad about. It was normal for this stranger to come and threaten her, for he cared about the safety of his lover's sister more than anyone else. He was merely a stranger to her after all. Hence, she tried to adjust her emotional state to calm down. Then, she decided to continue her search in the plum garden. Suddenly, the directed audio spell started to flicker at her waist. It was Yanqin. He was anxiously waiting for her news. Along the journey, Gu Shijio would stay in touch with Yanqin every time she resurfaced to catch a breath. She would update him of her current location for him to follow the path. Since they both agreed that there must be something wrong with the plum garden, she decided to call her friends and ask them for their assistance. Once everything had been carefully arranged, she turned and saw Di Fui standing not too far away, seemingly waiting for her. She looked away and wanted to check out other places. This place is highly dangerous. You and I should go together. Di Fui approached her. That is unnecessary. We should do it separately. It will be faster. Gu Shijio turned around and decided to leave. Di Fui held onto her sleeve tightly. Don't be silly. Screech. There was a sound of clothes being ripped. It was Gu Zijia's sleeves. She took a step back and answered icily, Di Fui, when did you become so protective over women? The plum garden is vast. It will be much faster if we search for them separately. Are you still mad at me? I am not showing any bias towards Lan Jingyi. I have checked the traces along the way and am sure that someone has been controlling her. It is not her intention to kidnap Lan Weihu. I understand. Don't worry. I will not harm her. She interrupted him with a sneer. Having nothing more to talk about with him, she teleported and disappeared. She remembered a quote from the modern era, saying how open-hearted and graceful it was for a modern couple to befriend one another after they broke up, even knowing the other half had betrayed them. They could even visit one another occasionally as if they were still close friends. She felt that it was the right thing to do back then, but it all seemed like complete nonsense now. If one could still forgive and treat his or her ex-lover like a friend even after a betrayal, it was surely not true love that they had been through. In her case, she could never treat Di Fui as a friend ever again. It was either love or complete isolation from one another. Chapter 1673. Gu Shijio would rather have no dealings with Di Fui. He was the last person she wanted to see. She shook her head to dismiss all the negative thoughts that were creeping into her mind and becoming overwhelming. Then she started to study the plum garden. She floated in the sky to better observe the structure of the garden. Within the vast fiery redness, many trails were intertwining with one another as a result of the swarming crowds from before. The plum garden was huge and vast. Seemingly, it was all in a muddle, like an ordinary plum garden without any specific array formation. She focused on the small passages in the garden that appeared to be like a spider web formation from the top view. Some of the trails were a result of the footprints from people who had walked through earlier. Others were there intentionally. Especially the ones on the periphery of the garden, they were mostly man-made. A sudden realization hit her. The plum garden was unusually huge and wide. Most people that came for the flowers would only stay around the periphery of the garden and avoid getting too deep into the garden. The deepest parts of the garden should not be covered with so many trails that were left behind. Was it a trap that was set by the enemy? She took another long look at the structure. Somehow, these trails resembled the shape of a spider web. At the center, there was a red plum tree that seemed to be strangely wicked. The appearance of the red plum tree was rather odd, as the branches extended to all directions that resembled the shape of a giant red spider web. Moreover, the color of the plum flower was even brighter than the flowers from other trees. Indeed, the tree was hidden amongst all other trees, each with their own branches that resembled different shapes of different animals. As a result, the tree became less eye-catching. Gu Shijio was very quick to observe its oddness. It was not easy, even for an expert, to tell the difference. Perhaps the tree was the key. Before she proceeded, the directed audio spell started to flicker again. It was Yen-chin, who was requesting for her current location. Gu Shijio gave him her coordinates. Soon, Yen-chin and Lan Yu were both present. Gu Shijio had not expected to see Lan Yu. She gave him a harsh look. Lan Yu was a smart man. He immediately understood what Gu Shijio was thinking and sighed. She is my fiancée. I will save her no matter what. The word fiancé came as an annoyance to Yen-chin, but he was not in the mood to argue with Lan Yu at the moment. He had decided never to let Little Fox go. After the rescue, he would not let her leave his side ever again, regardless of her virginity. Little Fox was his and only his. He would not give in any more, nor would he hold back. If she were out of keeping with his parents, he would travel the world with her and never go home again. As for her marriage with Lan Yu, he would do everything he could to break it off, even if he had to risk his life. Gu Shijio briefed them about her discovery. Yen-chin was very anxious. After taking a look at the tree, he immediately wanted to approach it. Gu Shijio quickly stopped him and warned, "Wait a second." Lan Yu sighed. "Brother Yen, you should not be so eager. If the tree is the critical point of the array, there has to be some major trick or trap. Your rash action is going to cost you your life. Even if your kung fu is strong enough to help you survive, your impetuous decision will alarm those in the array formation. It will be even more difficult for our rescue mission." Yen-chin heaved a sigh of relief. He knew he was too impulsive, a result of his immense anxiety. He had never seen such a vast array formation. How should it be decoded? He turned around to look at Lan Yu. "What do you think about it?" Lan Yu smelled the scent of the plum flower that he just plucked. Shortly he answered, "We wait." "What are we waiting for? If this is the place where they are imprisoned, there must be an entry for people to enter and exit the formation. We wait for one of them to come out, drug him, and take his identity to sneak into the place." Chapter 1674. Lan Yu's solution seemed like a conservative, but a safe idea. However, it was already late at night. No one would leave the place to go anywhere else at this time. Were the three of them going to wait until the next day? Moreover, if everything in the formation were complete, none of them would leave the place for a couple of weeks. Were they going to wait that long? They were desperate. How could they wait so long? Yen-chin glared fiercely at him as he spoke. "We can wait, but Little Fox cannot wait anymore." Lan Yu sighed. "She has been kidnapped for 2 days. If they were going to harm her, they would have done it already. There is not much difference in how long we wait." He was not entirely hopeful for Little Fox to return safely and in perfect health. He would do everything he ought to do in this rescue mission and leave the rest to God's will. Yen-chin decided to ignore him and turn to Gu Shijio for more suggestions instead. "Shijio, what do you think?" Gu Shijio looked at the mussel that was now close by her side. "Take out the hidden rabbit in your mouth." The mussel was guided here by Yen-chin. Upon hearing her instruction, it was perplexed and asked, "Master, how did you know that I have hidden a rabbit in my mouth?" The mussel had a habit of storing food, as it was always worried that it would get stranded somewhere with no food. Everywhere it went, it would eat what it caught. If the food were too much, it would keep it in its mouth as food storage. In its shell, there were 3 rabbits, 2 chickens, and even a small boar. As its master, Gu Shijio certainly knew its habit. Moreover, she could hear the scratching of the rabbit in its shells, desperately calling for an escape. The mussel was a little reluctant to let go of its attractive food from its storage. It continued to discuss with Gu Shijio, "Master, after letting it out, can I swallow it back?" Gu Shijio nodded in agreement. "You can go after it if there is no danger." The mussel was relieved. It agreed to her as long as it was allowed to take the rabbit back. Its prey should never be allowed to escape. It passed the rabbit to Gu Shijio. She took it and lowered her position to the point where she was close enough to throw the rabbit towards the tree. Bam! The rabbit fell onto the crown of the big tree. The rabbit was still recovering from the impact it had just suffered. With a quick leap, it wanted to run away, but its limbs felt as though they were entangled. It struggled a little. Soon, all of them witnessed something that completely blew their minds. Countless tiny roots emerged and tightened around the body of the rabbit. The roots then bound deeply into its flesh. The roots then drank up the moisture in its flesh. The rabbit was dried out and mummified almost instantaneously. Yen-Chen was utterly shocked. Lan Yu was in disbelief too. Strange. The tree consumes living things. In the blink of an eye, the rabbit disappeared, leaving no traces of its flesh and bones behind. It was as though it was never there. Yen-Chen was still recovering from his shock, as he had not expected the tree to be so ferocious. If he made the first contact earlier, he would end up with the same fate as the rabbit. The mussel felt sorry for its food. The rabbit was its storage. Before it had time to mourn for its dead rabbit, Gu Shijio reached out to it and asked for more. Take the chicken out as well. The mussel did not know what to say. Gu Shijio tapped on its shell lightly and comforted it. Listen to me. I will grill an entire lamb for you in the future. The mussel was immediately delighted. Grilled lamb was one of Gu Zijia's best dishes, and it was also the mussel's favorite. Chapter 1675. Eagerly, it presented one of its hidden chickens to Gu Shijio. Master, this is for you. Is one enough? If not, I still have one more. Gu Shijio threw the chicken toward the tree right away. The chicken seemed to have sensed the danger around it. When its claw touched the crown of the tree, it immediately spread its wings and sprang into the air. It was all too late. The petals on the tree fluttered in the night breeze before wrapping the entire body of the chicken, and the hopeless prey stopped moving instantly. A few moments later, the entangled petals dispersed into the air and fell back onto the tree. The chicken was nowhere to be seen. It seemed that these petals fed on blood as well. Lan Yu took a look at the twig of the plum flower in his hand. A shiver ran over his body, and he threw the flower away at once. This is the array formation of spider web in bloody plum. A sudden voice emerged, taking Lan Yu by surprise. He turned around and saw Di Fui standing behind them. He was also looking at the plum tree fixedly. Lan Yu was relieved to see him, as he had just wondered where the mighty man was. He did not expect his sudden emergence. He seemed to be working separately from Gu Shijio. Lan Yu's news was accurate, so he knew that Di Fui and Gu Shijio had parted on separate ways and that their relationship had ended. Wisely, he chose not to ask anything related to their relationship. What do you know about the array formation of spider web in bloody plum? Lan Yu was a very keen learner. Can you see the trails in the garden? They are not actually trails, but the gaseous pulse of the formation. After the bloody plum tree feeds on animal blood, it will draw nourishment from the center to the surrounding plum trees through the connecting pulse. Because of the bloody diet, the flowers are unusually bright-colored and beautiful. The rest of the plum trees will, in turn, absorb the essence of the sun and the moon. They will provide nutrients to the bloody plum tree to make it grow stronger. I finally know why these flowers are exceptionally gorgeous, but why do they have to create such a massive array formation to support the growth of the bloody plum tree? What will it do when it matures? Di Fui shook his head. This is a mechanism-operated array formation, which is usually closed. The people can still visit, as long as no impediment shall arise. No one can tell any difference between it. If anyone tries to break into the formation, the bloody plum tree will be immediately triggered. Every tree in the entire plum garden will come alive, like a web. They will behave like the center bloody plum tree, catching and eating humans alive. As vast as you can see, anyone who gets trapped in the garden will barely make it out alive. He had not expected the existence of such a vicious array formation in the world, hence, Lan Yu was enlightened. He then turned to give Yen-Chen a look. Luckily you did not attack it earlier, or else we would all become their buffet. The plum garden has been here for a very long time. I have not heard about anything wicked about it before. He continued to observe the bloody plum flower. Di Fui slowly explained, the bloody plum tree looks no different from a regular plum tree during the day. Moreover, it only started to exist in the later stage of the establishment, in the deepest part of the plum garden. Its blood-feeding behavior can only be seen at midnight. Anyone can walk past it during the day and nothing will happen, so no one will ever notice it. Lan Yu finally understood. Yan Chen was not very interested in the history of the plum garden, for it was not at all what he cared about. How should we break the formation? Di Fui looked at Gu Shijiao instead. Isn't she trying to break the formation? Lan Yu and Yan Chen turned their curious eyes to Gu Shijiao. She was trying to persuade the mussel to give up all of its food. The mussel was reluctant to, but it could not go against the will of its master. Heartbroken, it passed all of its food storage to Gu Shijiao one by one. Chapter 1676. Gu Shijiao threw the animals at the bloody plum tree one by one. As usual, the bloody plum tree sucked the animals dry in no time. The mussel clenched its fist at the sight of what it witnessed. The bloody tree was a bigger eater than it was. Lan Yu did not quite understand. Gu Shijiao was feeding the tree, how was she going to break the formation? The array formation is an ancient evil formation. It is not that I cannot break it, but if we do it the usual way, the man behind the vicious plan will be alarmed. By the time we break in, Lan Weihu and Lan Jingyi will probably be long gone. Di Fui continued to explain. Yan Chen looked at Gu Shijiao in bewilderment. Is she trying to do it unusually? Once the tree is well fed, does it mean that the door will open itself? Soon, there was a little movement on the ground. The bloody plum tree shifted a little, and a huge hole emerged at the bottom of the trunk. Lan Yu was utterly shocked. He could not believe what had just happened before his eyes. He thought that the tree would open its entrance automatically once it was well fed. Shortly, his speculation was proven wrong. Two men emerged from the hole. They looked like scholars from the way they dressed. They did not seem like they had just emerged from the ground. In fact, they looked more like two scholars who were just about to leave the examination hall. They observed their surroundings, and one of them noticed something. What is going on? The tree is unusually active tonight. Where did all the food come from? The other, who was equally confused, shook his head. Let's check the perimeter, so our master will not be distracted from his work. The two of them quickly took a detour around the plum garden. They did not forget to seal the entrance before they left, so the bloody plum tree returned to its normal appearance. Gu Shijiao and the rest of them stayed floating in the air within the wizardry barrier that had been set up by Di Fui so that they could stay unnoticed. Yan Chen turned to look at Gu Shijiao with eyes full of admiration, for she could always find the solution. Both the men took a quick look around the plum garden. Soon, they found a wild boar and a wolf within the woods. One of the men responded, "Actually, there is nothing odd. Our master has once said that the plum garden would release a unique scent to attract praise. The scent is probably stronger tonight." While they were chatting, they also performed a special technique to open the sealed entrance. The hole appeared again, and the staircases emerged to guide them in. Also, they did not forget to seal the hole again to return the tree to its usual appearance. Many staircases led them deep into the ground. On both sides of the walls, many candles were flickering in the dark. These unique candles would not be extinguished even after burning for 1,000 years. While they were walking, one of the men had a shiver running through his body. "Strange. I have a feeling that someone is following us," he confessed. His companion took a quick look around and saw nothing. Relieved, he answered, "There is nothing to be worried about. Who could have possibly entered this place? We have always been very careful when opening and closing the entrance. Forget about humans. I do not think that even a fly can make its way in. Don't you overthink." The man scratched his head in bewilderment. "I also do not think that others could make their way in." He sighed. "Maybe it is because there have been too many deaths around, so I keep thinking that their spirits stay behind everywhere." He continued to walk while he talked. After a while, he realized that his companion was far behind. He turned around and waited for him. "Why are you so slow all of a sudden?" he complained. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.